especially women, learning to lead by doing more, caring more, being more, kind of trying to hold it all together. And, in our work, I see them kind of helps them to slow down and to heal and reconnect with themselves. And in that reconnection, that's really when they learn to get over that over responsibility and take care of themselves and be more present. And from that place, from a more self-aware and emotionally intelligent place, they actually are able to let go of their old saboteurs of perfectionism and overachieving and those types of things, which come from I'm not enough, to feeling confident and authentic, so that they can really finally move into that place where they can not only take care of themselves, but bring out the best in everybody.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. And oh, buckle up. We have got one very exciting expert on our show. He is actually in the space of conscious leadership, which is why I am so excited to talk to him today. Side note, I'll just mention, you notice I'm flying solo. It is Q4, and you know what that means for Miss Tracy. Don't worry, she will be back again next week. But first, to introduce our fabulous guest, I know you're going to love him as much as I do. His stories run deep, and the well of wisdom that we're going to find in this interview is why I'm asking us to buckle up. So, Ron Stotts is a 3 times best-selling author with a PhD in psychology and a doctor of chiropractic. He's explored the depths of ancient wisdom in the latest in psychological, neurological studies, and leadership as he guides entrepreneurs and executives into the highest levels of conscious leadership. Ron spent the last 5 decades exploring the deepest caves and soaring heights of both personal and spiritual journeys. He is an intimate with all aspects of the territory as a transformational guide. He has supported thousands of others in their journey as they move through the most difficult challenges and develop their greatest potential. I think my audience is definitely plugging in to the alignment that is going to be helping us step into our flow today. Ron, welcome to the show. I am so honored to have you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
We were just catching a quick riff off the mic, and I had to ask the man politely to press pause because I had to bring the wisdom that was pouring out of him to our folks. So, Ron, I think the best place for us to launch is really starting to explore a little bit of your hero's journey and backstory in terms of how you were inspired to go on this conscious leadership mission of yours.
All right. I'll jump into it. A couple transition points, I think, that I actually didn't talk about with you earlier is, I was a national rowing champion at 18 and first year of college, and had a cute little girlfriend, and I really thought I had it pretty well figured out. And it's like, okay, here we go. And I was not a good student, and it was back in the time when were inducted into the service if you weren't in school, and I decided, that since college wasn't working out for me grade-wise, that I would join the Marine Corps, following my dad's footsteps from World War II, and it wasn't, at first it just seemed like another sporting event. I was in great shape, and I was, king of the hill, doing well. And one morning I was laying there on the rifle range ready to get my little badge, and they threw up a human silhouette rather than that bullseye. And my little 19-year-old mind recognized that this was not a sporting event, that I was really becoming extraordinarily good at learning to kill human beings.
Oh, wow.
And I literally and I don't even know how it happens, but I stood up and threw my rifle in the mud, and that was it. And
Mm.
that went over really well with my drill instructors.
Oh,
I
I think you're being facetious now.
think I am. But yeah, that was a rugged few days there,
I
and
can only
but I
imagine.
finally did get out, and but I was a mess. I really just the whole everything was going on in Vietnam, losing several dozen friends over there. Really left me in tatters and unaware of who I was, what I needed to do, what direction to take in life. And so, I really got to the place where I was just suicidal and took that into heart and hiked deep into the woods one day. I decided to really think about that. Was that my best choice? And decided it was. And on the third morning, I sitting on a big boulder and I had a large hunting knife. I was a big, strong young man, and I thrust that towards my heart at full speed. And somewhere before the knife penetrated, I dissolved in a ball of white light. And I wasn't there, the world around me wasn't there. And trust me, this was not anything that I was familiar with. But I was sitting in the awareness of the perfection of life. I was sitting in just this very clear understanding of the purpose of life and the beauty of life and just really the oneness of existence. And don't know how long that went on. Very timeless, but as I came out of it, the knife was, a good 20 yards away, and I was fine. And so, but I recognized from that experience that there was something to life, that I needed to find that. And just had that experience really became my initial focus of how do I recreate that awareness, that oneness, that feeling, that knowing. So, I journeyed up to a little cabin on an island up in Washington that a family had owned for years. I'm talking outhouse and wood stove kind of cabin.
My
And
favorite kind.
and and after a few months of learning to breathe and sit and relax and focus, meditated, I learned later was a term. I decided I needed to do something with this, and that's when I went back to school and became a very, very good student, and got the PhD and all of that. Just really not so much the piece of paper meaning much, but just the journey to learn and redefine myself and who was I? What are my values? What's the meaning of life for me? Letting go of all of those that had been shared with me growing up. So that took me into paying attention and being conscious and watching different levels of leadership and just beginning to value the inner work. And that became my journey, and 50 some years later it's still my journey. So yeah.
Wow. What is your understanding of what happened there in terms of the white light?
Well, at the time I I'd always been kind of religious, not well, not so religious as just interested in what this God thing was. And at that point, God was still this kind of separate entity to me. And so I remember just before I swinging the knife, I said, God, if there's anything you'd like to say, this would be a good time.
Right.
you know.
Seems like the
And
right thing to say at that
yeah,
moment.
And so I don't, now I could have a much deeper sense of what God might be. I really feel like there's just consciousness, and the oneness that I experienced in that white light was the oneness of that consciousness of the universe. And
Mm,
God is more just an expression of what is expressed, what is consciousness. So it's not an entity, it's all of existence. I
mm,
stopped using that term for many years, but more comfortable with it now. But
mhm,
in that oneness, I really did rediscover how to re-enter that level of consciousness, how to really find that in terms of consciousness through my own inner healing, through breathing, through connecting, through letting go and becoming. Did I
letting
come close to answering your question? I lost it somewhere in there.
I absolutely think you did.
Oh, okay.
It leads me to another area of curiosity though, as you're giving me that answer. I'm sure you run up against working with leaders who aren't necessarily spiritual or religious. And so do you think
Yeah,
that that is a
hardly any of them.
right? Okay, so we're speaking the same language,
Yeah.
right? I think we talked about this off air in terms of how my life's work is devoted to serving the high achievers in the trenches, and striving on the outside looking in actually feels like surviving. And I think that one of the byproducts of that is sometimes we do get disconnected from our sense of oneness or,
Absolutely. Yeah.
definitely our sense of connection to one another. High achievers, behind those gates, nobody would ever believe it. But that's actually a struggle that they live every single day, is how alone and separate they feel.
Yeah, I mean, I see high performing, especially women, learning to lead by doing more, caring more, being more, kind of trying to hold it all together. And,
Mm-hmm.
in our work, I see them kind of, it helps them to slow down and to heal and reconnect with themselves. And in that reconnection, that's really when they learn to get over that over responsibility and take care of themselves and be more present. And from that place, and from a more self-aware and emotionally intelligent place, they actually are able to let go of their old saboteurs of perfectionism and overachieving and those types of things, which come from I'm not enough, to feeling confident and authentic so that they can really finally move into that place where they can not only take care of themselves, but bring out the best in everybody. Yeah.
Well, that definitely is in alignment with the work that I do in the trenches for the
I would think
last
so. Yeah.
two decades, and I think we're really aligned in terms of the hero's journey backstory that inspired all of that. I always say that empathic folks, we don't believe in useless suffering, right? So the way we transmute that is we have to find some useful way to go and serve others with what it is that we learned in our hero's journey.
Yeah.
And so I can see obviously that has informed a lot of how you're working with leaders as well.
Most successful conscious leaders really lead a mindful life. They lead a life where they have and invite regular, significant personal and developmental experiences into their life. And they don't see those challenges, whether it's somebody, a death or a birth or using medicine or whatever it is they do to have that significant transformational experience. That's a part of their life because they use the mindfulness and the meditation and the yoga to kind of maintain a level of consciousness. But then they also recognize, oh, I need to break out of that shell. And that's what those significant personal experiences are about. But then they have their daily practices and it just continues. I mean, it started off more on a spiritual journey, to become more conscious. And then it moved into from spirituality to practicality and living and working in the world. And I saw, my hidden agenda is sort of to create a more conscious and caring world. And I recognize that significantly conscious leaders can have a huge and lasting impact, not only on their organization, but on a societal level. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where I realigned and have been working with that for quite a long time now. Yeah.
Well, that's where I want to go next because I was checking out your pages on social there last night and I saw that you had something, our mission is to change the way the game is being played by teaching leaders how to go inside out rather than outside in, all that maladaptive strategy you just referred to with the people pleasing, caretaking, perfectionism, all those things we do to maladaptively seek external validation as a supplement for our worth and social safety, right?
Yeah.
But you said something that I think really aligns with that mission. You said the higher we climb in terms of our game, the higher our consciousness needs to be. Will you unpack that a little bit for our folks?
Yeah, when I think it was my publisher, she kind of said you have to have a niche. You have to have I mean, I had worked with owners of NFL teams and national hotel chains, but I'd also worked with, regular folks, and I'd never thought of anybody, as a particular niche for me or with the avatar, as they call it now. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
but she said that you really have to have that to know who you're writing your book for and what you're trying to accomplish and that type of thing. And that made sense. And so, she had kind of explained that concept because she had been doing some research on leadership. And it turns out that there's about 7 levels of leadership in the traditional research in leadership and studies. And what I recognize is that each level, and we all go through each level as we evolve, but about 70% of people get stuck kind of in what they call the mid-level of leadership, where you're trying to achieve or trying your goal or you're an expert. And that mid-level is really about you still trying to gain access or accolades or attention, love, if you and dare to go to there from others. And the people who have done the inner work and really healed so that they've gotten to a place where they love and accept themselves, which is a big shift in life,
Hmm.
they become more conscious. And so it's like, oh, each level is really, they're just more conscious. And just
Hmm.
to define that consciousness, really your level of consciousness determines how aware you are of your thinking, how aware you are of your feelings, how aware you are in your relationship to life and others. And it also defines, the more conscious you are, defines how you see and how you experience and how you react to everything that comes into your life.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
less conscious, more fear oriented. You're kind of, threatened by a lot of things, more fear oriented. And so you're not breathing, you're not present, and things are coming in and you see them more as problems. And yet, as you go into a state of consciousness, more conscious, you recognize you're breathing, you're feeling more optimistic, open, and things are seen as opportunities. Same
Hmm.
same equivalence, but there now you see the opportunity because you realize, I certainly see it in my life. Everything that comes into my life is an opportunity to support me in growing and healing and becoming whole, and so once you really understand that and begin to trust the process that's available to us, the game is rigged and it's rigged in our favor, you know, and as you begin to trust that and come from that place, you're not exhausted, you're not burned out, you're not, you're treating yourself better. And, you asked me about where is spirituality in relationship to leadership. And be honest with you, I find across the board, literally, people come in needing to take care of themselves. They've got that inner child who is still looking for love and acceptance outside themselves, which was completely appropriate in their childhood,
Hmm.
but they haven't transitioned and healed that old stuff so
Hmm.
that they're looking, they're really learning to love and accept themselves. And
Hmm.
that's where you become confident, authentic, and whole.
Hmm.
And that's where you also find that unconditional love that you've wanted all of your life.
Mm. That's the best part,
That's
right?
the best part. That's a good
It's
part.
just so wild to me, Ron, that in 2025, with all that we know and all the research and the data and the neuroscience, that less than 1/3 of adults actually make it to this stage in the maturation process known as self-authorization. The rest of us, the other 2/3 of adults, are still stuck in that social self stage of basically where my daughter is, right? In terms
Mhm.
of 14 years old. And
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it's just so confusing to me as to how that is, in terms of being modern day times. And the one thing that I always say to my leaders, because we know that's a ticking time bomb, especially if you have aspirations for leadership, because the higher you ascend, the more the pressure builds, the more expectation, the more responsibility for others, right? And so ultimately, that's where these insecurities start to get pulled up from underneath the rug, which maybe is why they're stalling out kind of midway, right? Through that ascension
Well, I mean, we're
process.
in everything there's such rapid change and increased complexity, especially in the business world. And you can't literally are unable to be a high level leader if you're at the effect of that, if you're still back into that category where you're leading from fear, where you're not breathing, where you're not present, and you're trying to figure it out. A lot of the people that come to me, I find that when they were young, they got a lot of love and attention because they were so smart and they got into the right schools, they got the right job, and all they look like, oh, okay, I've got this one going, it's good. But then all of a sudden they start running into that's not enough. And that's when
Exactly.
and that's when they get frustrated, and even afraid. And that's when they come to us and we help them understand that you need to really become more self-aware and more emotionally intelligent. And that really involves neurologically rewiring your brain. You've got to
Hmm.
heal the past so that the brain gets quieter and the right brain begins to kick in and connect with the left brain, and you get integrated whole brain thinking, which gives you a much, greater insight and awareness and higher levels of thinking. And then
Hmm.
the quiet that comes with that, the forebrain begins to blossom as your CEO of your conscious brain rather than being run by the amygdala, the emotional center. And that takes them into being a more conscious leader. They see the answers. They're able to breathe and be present and see what my best next option is. They don't have to stop and research and, burn out and go through all those stages. They just need to be present. I call that big mind. I don't know whether you saw that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Big
Hmm.
mind, it's really a fascinating thing. Buckminster Fuller, who was also a mentor of mine, really guided me into that. And it's really where you learn, because you've quieted and centered yourself enough, you can just let whatever is coming into your life, your only job is to be breathing and curious, breathing and present. And from that place, you always are accessing the highest levels of thinking that they're available. You
Hmm.
literally, everybody knows about the different theta, delta, alpha brainwaves, frequencies that we use when we sleep, when we're working on something, whatever, meditating. And when we can get into that very centered, quiet, whole place, there's a bridge that crosses all of those different frequencies so that you're really accessing the best of all that's available to you. And that's when you can run. I see people, CEOs that will come in and they're moving from CFO to CEO and within a year. And then, in the following years, they might be running several organizations because they've really supported bringing out the best in everybody, and everybody's handling their leadership skills. And so there's less for them, that CEO to do. So all of a sudden now, with ease and comfort, they're even running more than one organization. Yeah, and it certainly increases productivity and profits in all of them. So yeah,
Hmm. I
yeah.
always compare it to being a high level athlete. It was all about
Mhm.
training capacity. And that's
Mhm.
what leadership's all about to me. And that's what you're talking about in terms of this whole brain experience of integration, where we're led by our intuition, not our fears,
Yeah,
right?
right. Well said. Yeah.
And that totally was the best training ground for me to learn how, if I always say, if I wasn't so present on that ice, especially at the highest levels, I was on the ice, I was behind the play, like then I was on the bench. So it really compelled me to have to learn how to trust that level of presence and being fully engaged in the moment. And
Yeah.
what a beautiful thing, because that's where we're able to step into that flow state, right?
I saw it. It was on film. There was one of the top. I can't remember his name right now. Top soccer players, but
Hmm.
there's three of them, two of the opposing team and himself, running down the sidelines, and they've all got their eye on where the ball is, and out of nowhere he jumps up, turns, and I mean he's just in this perfect place where the ball comes, and he hits it in the perfect way with his head, and it goes into the net. And I
Oh,
mean, you can't think that.
that's magic right there.
It
I
is,
know.
and that's where a conscious CEO can get to, where you
Mm.
really are relatively effortless as opposed to that struggle and burnout and everything that we see too often.
Hmm. It's interesting. I was in a top 1% locker room this week, and the first question I asked is, where did you learn how to manage pressure for performance in these kinds of high stakes, top 1% environments, because it's been my lived experience that high achievers, we really can't trust that down gear. We don't trust slowing down. We think it's akin to falling behind,
Right.
And
Things are going
so,
to fall apart. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So how do you get your clients when they walk through that door to trust the down gear?
Well, it's a lot of it is part of that neurological rewiring. You, through the process, you get them to begin to breathe and explore. As they breathe, that right brain kicks into gear and the emotional awareness kicks into gear, and they begin to see what they're at the effect of from their childhood. What came up in their childhood that wasn't able to be healed because nobody helped them or they weren't sophisticated enough to deal with it then. And as they become more aware, that subconscious becomes more conscious, and the conscious is then healed in the process. And in that healing, their mind gets quieter, and that's really, where we get into all the other things that I was talking about. And you
Hmm.
mentioned something earlier, and I think I kind of slid past it, is they come in focused on themselves, but all of a
Hmm.
sudden their interest in their family and significant friends develops, and they become more compassionate, empathetic with them, just as a reflection of, where they are within themselves. And then all of a sudden it graduates into even more. And pretty soon they become very spiritually oriented because they're more connected and with that oneness that I was referring to in the
Hmm.
beginning. And
So,
so they're taking better care of themselves and others. I think our relationship with ourselves determines our relationship with others. So as they feel more connected and loving, and I mean, in business, you're not supposed to use the word loving probably, but that's really what makes all the difference in the world is when people start accepting and loving themselves, trusting themselves.
hmm,
And the good stuff.
that's my highest intention.
Yeah.
Want to tell us a little bit about that strategy? I was reading all about that too, in terms of using our highest intention and making it our GPS. And I like to talk about this with my clients is taking them all the way up and to the right,
Hmm.
all the way to the rocking chair before that shot clock runs out, It's like, what's going to matter most then in those moments, do you think?
I find that that turns out to be one of the most critical things. If your highest intention is to have a comfort zone that's limiting you, it'll eventually limit you completely. When you look at,
Hmm.
I was studying, this was years and decades ago, but the top 10 reasons people die are really eight of them are lifestyle choices. And so a lot of people are somewhat consciously committing suicide because of that limited lifestyle, that fear of change, that just yeah, getting stuck. And so it's
Hmm.
really a matter of, I think, for me, getting people excited about this journey so that they're evolving. And so that as they evolve, they become more conscious. As they become more conscious, they become more connected. And now I forgot your question. What was
Yeah, it's
it?
the highest intention
Thank you.
strategy that I was reading about as a GPS.
Yeah, and when they first come in, I often ask them what they really want the most, what's their highest intention, and it's usually about themselves. And I want to be a better parent, I want to make more money, whatever it is. But by the end of the first couple of months, when they've done really a lot of the deep inner healing, and then they begin to go, oh, well, I really want to have this effect on in my family, this effect in the world. But then as they continue the journey and become even more conscious, it's not so much their highest intention as their greatest aspiration. Because by that time, aspiring to something means you have to breathe into it. It means it's not just something you can stand on a stool and grab. You've got to really do, you're going to be breathing and letting go, breathing and becoming. You know you're on a journey of development. But that compass heading is everything. It takes you through the difficulties. You've
Mhm.
got this bigger picture perspective that supports you in not getting caught up and distracted by the little, daily challenges that we run into. And it makes
Mhm.
all the difference in the world. You have
Mhm.
more meaning to your life. and yeah,
Especially right now with all this disruption and uncertainty in the ethers. It's just,
yeah,
it's,
I hadn't
it's,
noticed any. No.
well, you're living in the middle of the woods, I'm pretty sure you just told me. So maybe you're protected by all those trees. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's why I'm so aghast that only, Tasha Eurich, the world's foremost expert on the topic of self-awareness, which is what we're talking about today, basically in terms of consciousness, right? Says that whilst 95% of us out there think we're highly self-aware, on average, only 10 to 12% of us are. And that's, I think, some of what we're all feeling as things are really starting to accelerate in terms of that disruption and change. We've been talking on the show, Ron, about these future generations that us mothers are all raising and seeing cannot be led the same way our parents led us, right? They need conscious parents coming into the workforce. And then AI obviously being predicted to be a bigger disruption than the internet.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that this is why we're diving deeply into this whole concept of conscious leadership. And I mean, we're talking about healing in the context of leadership development and training. And that even is just for so many leaders, just like, what? Like,
Yeah, that's a
those
big discomfort.
it's a big discomfort. So I would
Yeah,
love to hear what you predict in terms of how all of this is going to play out for us humans with your level of consciousness, and then obviously like what is the advice in terms of all the people out there, that are stuck in their amygdalas, their reactions, all that fear, and that's preventing them the capacity to think creatively outside the box, to see where they can leverage all of this disruption for the purposes of their growth and evolution.
yeah. I do a lot of work and it would be called healing the inner child work. But the truth is that's just something that has to get done. You know, it's very real. It's vital to one's personal growth, leadership development, all of that. But if we don't deal with that, then we have this 90% of our thoughts being subconscious and running our life. And all those subconscious, all the things that we did as a child to protect ourselves, to become a perfectionist, to get quiet, to do, to make everybody else happy, whatever our little gig was, we really recognize that those same things that helped us as a child become our saboteurs as an adult. And so, if you don't go back and heal those things with that child, that inner child within yourself, then you're going to be at the effect of those saboteurs. And those saboteurs can look like being the perfectionist, the overachiever, all
Caretaker.
everything. Yeah, there's a good dozen of them that I think are classically talked
Hmm.
about. And so it's like, and it doesn't take, literally within a couple of months, all that can get handled. I mean, if you really dive in deeply and get it cleaned up, it doesn't mean that everything is cleaned up, but you're comfortable with the process. And so when something next comes up, you handle that with, whatever level of comfort and ease you can. And so it just becomes, your way of life. Your highest level, most successful conscious leaders really lead a mindful life. They lead a life where they have and invite regular significant personal and developmental experiences into their life, and they don't see those challenges, whether it's somebody a death or a birth or using medicine or whatever it is they do to have that significant transformational experience. That's a part of their life because they use the mindfulness and the meditation and the yoga to kind of maintain a level of consciousness. But then they also recognize, oh, I need to break out of that shell. And that's what those significant personal experiences are about. But then they have their daily practices and it just continues.
Hmm.
And that's really what brings them to those higher levels where they experience that ease and comfort,
Hmm.
where they really are able, one fellow, he flew me down to the Bay Area a couple months ago, 3 months ago now. And, when he came in, his first comment to me, it was just after COVID started, so we'd gone through all the, what
Okay.
we needed to do to be there together. And, his first comment as we sat down was, well, in this love stuff, I don't love myself and I'm doing what fine, and he did. He had five nine-figure businesses. So, but I also pointed out that the reason he was in that room is because the love of his life was leaving him. His two adult sons were not wanting to relate with him, and he was having trouble with losing key personnel and that type of thing. So, but within a month, he had literally fallen in love with himself. And started restructuring his businesses, and you know, and he's just continued that journey. We worked together off and on, and he flew me down to the Bay Area and to work with him because he was launching this new international project, and he was also having double knee surgery, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
High achiever.
yeah, yeah. But he's handling it, and he's handling it from a very centered, conscious place now. And the
Mm,
love of his life came back, and they've been married now for several years, and they're just a
mm.
great relationship. While I
Wow.
was down there, his two sons are now working with him, and his organization are one of his CEOs also came through my work programs, and I was talking to him about 6 months ago, and I said, "Well, so how is so and so?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. I haven't talked to him for about 3 months." you know, and this was a
Uh-oh.
guy who was micromanaging everything every day
That's a
before
symptom of the
that.
shift, right?
Yeah.
He's no longer in his high achiever mindset. He's
But
in
within
alignment.
a year, he had doubled the value of three of his businesses, initially. But now I really have no idea what the figures are because it's exponentially grown so much, and he's having a national influence. One of his things is in soccer, so it's very easy to watch the significant impact that he's having there on an international level. And so it's just fun for him. Well, it is fun for him too. He's having a blast, but it's fun for me to see how that energy that he's a very energetic, very intelligent guy, but I'm watching that wave of his healing move through his organizations, move through his life and associates. And that's what it's about. That's what our work's
That's
about.
the
And
ripple effect.
yeah,
Yep, that's what it's all about for me too, sir.
yeah,
The last place I got to make sure I squeeze in before I let you go.
okay.
I always talk about how the number one play in this conscious leadership playbook is really the model carries the most weight.
Uh-huh.
In terms of the impact and the influence that we carry as leaders, right? Like that really comes down to what we don't understand is actually driving this bus in our energy. So many
Mhm.
leaders I have to break down that concept for. And you happen to have a model that carried a lot of weight, not only for you, but for me and probably a whole bunch of my listeners. We were talking about the hero's journey off the start, and I thought that would be a nice full circle place for us to land this plane. What was it like getting mentored by the Joseph Campbell, the person who came
Yeah.
up with the hero's journey? And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know about the hero's journey, maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Joseph Campbell, who was my mentor, he did a lot of research on cultures and saw within the culture that there was really one story, and that story was the hero's journey. And it's the journey of moving through all those limitations that we've been talking about. It's about stepping out of your comfort zone. You can, Star Wars is basically written quite literally directly from the whole hero's journey format. And you can see the key figures stepping out of their comfort zone or being kicked out of their comfort zones and having to learn and grow and develop and become and take on more and more responsibility in the sense that they become part of the bigger world and taking care of that bigger world. And so, for me, it was just a deeper and deeper understanding. With Joseph, I invited him to come and speak at college that I was teaching at, and after I had to pick him up at the airport, and afterwards we went to lunch. And so, in talking, he became quite fascinated by my whole spiritual path at the time, meditation and all of that, and so we started really seeing each other regularly. And up in Big Sur, we'd both be teaching at Esalen or something like that, and and I remember him talking about, what we were walking in the woods one day, and he was talking about that inner cave that you have to, everything that you want is in that inner cave, and you have to open the door and go into that cave to access it. And that really, of course, that inner cave is where we shoved all our emotional backlog, everything that we didn't know how to deal with as a child that nobody helped us deal with. And in opening that, you're of course learning to access yourself. And the treasure that we seek in that inner cave, of course, is ourself. It's that unconditional love that we've always wanted. And in opening that cave and cleaning that out and finding that acceptance and wholeness and love, we recognize who we are. We become authentic. We become that whole, person that we were meant to be. And then we start creating the life that we were meant to be. And we're able to support others in creating the life that they were meant to be. And so it's really, working, just a brilliant man. He wasn't ever, Ron, do this or lecturing. We were just always kind of chatting, we were on a walk and then we'd be chatting about things. And the insights that came with it really allowed me to understand much of what I still do today, and it's guiding people on that heroine's journey so that they can really discover who they are, what they're capable of, what their purpose is, what life's really truly about. And that's a journey of becoming conscious. You breathe and let go, you breathe and become. And what you're letting go of is everything that's not needed or limited in you, and what you're breathing into and becoming is who you truly are and what you're capable of. And that is an incredibly amazing human being that will end up contributing significantly to the world.
And it's a rewarding journey. And I
Oh,
think that's the thing we want to really make sure people understand, because it sounds like a lot of work, Ron. This is always the pushback,
no.
right? But
People used to say, "Oh, Ron, you're so courageous," and it's like, no, I can't carry all that crap through my life. I can't. That's too much of a burden to carry all that, to keep that cave door locked. And so, it's not courageous. I did it just out of, I needed to take care of myself, so that healing is not, it's like a hoarder. You've got all that emotional backlog in that inner cave, hoarding it and thinking that that makes you feel safe. And, that little piece of paper, that 300 t-shirts or whatever it is that you've hoarded, it brings value and safety to your life, and it doesn't. It's destroying your life. And so you have to unpack that. You have to let it go and become who you're truly meant to be.
what do you predict for the future of leadership? Do you see a lot more consciousness showing up on this play?
I think we're in a neck and neck race right now. We're either hitting bottom or or going deeper. For me, I remember a spiritual teacher I had. He said, this is second grade here, and so do the best you can to graduate and help others to graduate, but don't be attached to changing, second grade to fourth grade or something. And then so I handle it from that sort of perspective. If you've got attachments, you're going to have fear and pain. That's kind of the Buddhist 101. And so, for me, it's doing the best I can and helping others who are ready to do the best they can. And, I've got great grandsons who I'm trying to create, a better world for, and great grandsons and great granddaughters of throughout the world, better world for. But you have to just do the best you can. You can't be fearful that it won't happen, because then you're falling right into the trap with everybody else. Yeah,
Best way to get what we don't want is to fear it.
yeah, exactly. Nicely said. Yeah,
That's why I think I'm answering this call as
yeah,
a leadership coach, to really step into and stick the landing on,
yeah.
you know, this this
Yeah.
this being the way that I want to describe my life's work, because I think
Yeah.
all the way back in my hero's journey, it's all been a call to consciousness. It really has, and yeah, I just think there's a lot of us out there right now that are scared and just need help interpreting what all of that means.
Well, and this work transforms you, whether you're, in our roles, it certainly transforms you. But it is transformational work. It's not just a quick fix that you're struggling with for the rest of your life. It's a major shift that becomes, you discover who you are, and that's, you become more heart-based. You're higher performing and realizing more of, success and achievement in that process. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's the irony, right? We let
yeah,
go of trying to control the outcomes. We just own the process, and
yeah,
the best outcomes naturally occur,
yeah, yeah,
which is also, I think, part of the Buddhist teachings in terms of the importance of learning how to surrender
yeah.
those
I,
attachments.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of just wandering around looking for people who want to do that deeper work that'll
Hmm.
transform
Hmm.
their life and allow them to fall in love with themselves and serve and support others on a meaningful journey.
Well, you've definitely showed up in service to that for all of our crowd. I know that they are definitely going to love this episode. Before I let you go, Ron, if anyone out there is ready to answer that call to
Yeah.
consciousness, how can they find you? Where would you like them to reach out?
I think just going to my website, that's ronstotts.com, stotts.com. And, I've designed it intentionally. There's materials there that can support them in beginning that inner journey, becoming more self-aware, so that they don't have to just dive off the cliff into the deep end. And, so it's a safe, graduated sort of process. And they can see my programs, they can learn more about what I share through, God knows how many different formats are on blogs and everything else. But yeah, it's a safe place to begin to explore what your possibilities are, because I see it in all of my clients. They come in with that trepidation, and within a very short time, they recognize they're on this amazing journey of beginning to understand themselves and this adventure that they get onto. And really, I think of myself more as a guide into that adventure. And yeah, it's really a fun thing. It really is. Yeah.
That's really what the hero's journey is all about, eh? Is
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
call to adventure.
Yeah.
That's why I know people are going to want to reach out and find you. We're going to list all
Yeah.
of that information in the show notes to make that as accessible as possible. I know you've got a plethora of resources. I was scoping
Yeah.
out there last night in
Yeah.
my reconnaissance work. But Ron, I know when my co-host hears this episode, she's going to want to have you back. So we're definitely going to
Okay.
have to come find you for a part two
All
somewhere
right. All right.
somewhere yonder. But for now, thank you so much. This was honestly one of my favorite interviews all
Oh,
year. And I'm
thank you
so
very
deeply grateful that my intuition found you.
much.
For everyone listening, thank you. Our attitude of gratitude runs so deep. Thank you for tuning in. And please help us share this powerful, game changing ripple effect, all this possibility that is
Yeah.
really available to every single one of us listening when we actually step through the portal of consciousness. We're
Yeah.
also in the year of co-creation, so please let us know how you enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear your feedback on that. And yeah, share this episode with a friend, a sister, a brother, a colleague. This definitely is going to be showing up in service to the collective call I think a lot of us conscious leaders are hearing right
Yeah.
now.
Well, thank
That's
you, everybody.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.